Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Let's look into the first question. Consider the following statements. The largest component of natural gas is methane. Sour gas is natural gas containing hydrogen sulfide. Sweet gas is the natural gas that contains very little or no hydrogen sulfide. Which of the above statements is or correct? Take a pause, answer, and then get back to the discussion. The answer to this is 1, 2, and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of the natural gas. Let's look into the options for the discussion. The first statement says the largest component of natural gas is methane. This is a right statement. So what is the natural gas? This is nothing but a colorless, highly flammable hydrocarbon. And one of the major component of the natural gas happens to be the methane. What is a sour gas? This is a natural gas or any other gas which contains hydrogen sulfide in it is what is called as the sour gas. Finally, a sweet gas is one which has very little or no hydrogen sulfide. That is what is called as the sweet gas. When it comes to the largest reserves in the countries, Russia is one of the country which has the largest reserve of natural gas. Now let us try and understand what is the process of formation of petroleum or the natural gas. When it comes to the petroleum and the natural gas formation, how was it formed? We have the tiny marine plants and animals which died and were buried on the ocean floor. This was covered with layers of silt and sand as well, and over a considerable period of time, heat and pressure turned the remains into oil and natural gas. Today, we drill them, and that is what is called as petroleum and natural gas. So, a natural gas is a byproduct of the crude oil. As part of the extraction and delivery, what we have is a three-step process. One is what is called as an upstream, second is what is called as midstream, finally what we have is called as the downstream. What is this upstream process? Basically, the oil exploration and production is part of the upstream. Let's say we have found out one of the areas or a particular region which has considerable presence of oil. So going to this particular region, setting up the equipments, exploring that particular region, and ultimately drilling holes in that particular region to extract the oil is the process of upstream. Followed by this, once the oil is extracted, this will be processed, and that is what is called as the midstream process. So when it comes to the midstream, it is about storing the oil and also transporting to the delivery units. So what happens in midstream? The oil that is extracted, explored in the upstream process will ultimately become part of the storage region, and this will be transported to the delivery unit. Finally, what we will have is the downstream process where the product preparation and usage takes place, where ultimately it is the customers who would be able to get the petroleum products or the natural gas. So this is a three-step process when it comes to extraction, storage, and ultimately delivery. As part of the assignment, we have different organizations and authorities in India in the petroleum ministry. Which are the organizations or the industries which is built for upstream? Which are the organizations which is part of the midstream? Which are the organizations which is part of the downstream, which is primarily engaged in marketing and distribution? Do a basic search and put it on the comment section. We have explained you about upstream, midstream, and downstream. All that you have to find out is which authority or the organization or the industry in India is employed to do such a work in India. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following fundamental rights are available only to citizens and not to foreigners? Article 15, Article 16, Article 19, Article 28, Article 30. The answer to this is 1, 2, 3, and 5 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of some of the rights which are not given to the foreigners. When it comes to the fundamental rights which are only given to the citizens of India and not to the foreigners, what we have is Article 15, Article 16, Article 19, Article 29 and Article 30. These five fundamental rights are explicitly given to the citizens, but they are not accorded to the foreigners. What is this article all about? Why has India not given permission to this particular foreigner for coming back to India will be part of our CNA discussion. So stay tuned to our CNA for the elaborate discussion about this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements are correct? Article 23 protects an individual not only against the state but also against private persons. India has signed the UN Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. Which of the following statements are correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of trafficking. Let us try and understand what are these options. When it comes to the Constitution of India, we have Article 23, which basically deals with preventing the exploitation of trafficking. What is this human trafficking? Basically, you have the human beings who are transported, recruited, transferred, harbored and are received by other people either by use of force or by use of threat or by coercion. So the ultimate purpose of trafficking is exploitation. To prevent exploitation of human trafficking, what we have is Article 23 of the Indian Constitution, which prevents and prohibits traffic of the human beings. Added to this, we also have the Indian Penal Code as well, which also has provisions which clearly mentions that trafficking is prohibited when it comes to India. If there are people who continue to exploit people either by force or by coercion or by threat, in such a case, if they are caught by the lawful authorities, they will be put behind bars, and this happens to be a non-bailable offense. Some of the examples of human trafficking include exploiting people for the case of prostitution, organ trade, sexual exploitation, forced labor. In fact, servitude also falls under this principle of Article 23. India, yes, has signed the UN Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. According to this convention, there are about three protocols. Protocol to prevent, suppress and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children. Since India is a signatory to this particular convention, has ratified this particular convention, the second statement also is right according to the question. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. It is a country located at the intersection of Eastern Europe and Western Asia. It is part of Caucasus region, bounded to the west by the Black Sea. It is bounded on the north and northeast by Russia. The above statements best describe Turkey, Azerbaijan, Georgia or Armenia. The answer to this is Georgia. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of Georgia. Where is this Georgia? It is here on the north, and to the northeast what we have is Russia. To the western part what we have is Black Sea, and to the southern and the southeastern part what it has is Turkey, Armenia and Azerbaijan. What is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about Queen Ketevan. Who is Queen Ketevan? She is treated as a martyr when it comes to Georgia's historical background. Her relics were currently found in Goa, and as a result the Indian foreign minister has taken the relics of Queen and has given it back as part of the India-Georgia relationship. So a part of the relic which was present in the Goa church was given to Georgia so that we can establish and enhance on our relationship. Apart from this cultural enhancement program, there is also a political meaning that is associated with this particular visit. Jaishankar happens to be the first external affairs minister of India to undertake an official visit to Georgia after it has achieved independence from the erstwhile Soviet Union in the 1991. Much prior to that, we also had Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, who had also visited as a foreign minister in 1978, but after it gained independence, this is for the first time we have the external affairs minister visiting Georgia. What is the political significance of this particular meet? Back in April, what we have is the Russian foreign minister who had visited India. Ideally, Russia and India India have a very good relationship, but of late Russia is also engaging with Pakistan as well. So after visit to India, Russian foreign minister had also gone to Pakistan. So what is India trying to do now? Russia and Georgia do not have good relationship right now. So what has Indian foreign minister done? As of now, because the relationship between Russia and Georgia is not perfect, he has made a visit to Georgia, indirectly conveying that what Russia was done was wrong. This is a note to Russia to symbolically suggest that India and Pakistan are not in good terms, so Russia has to value the friendship with India. Now let's look into the next practice question. What was the reason for Mahatma Gandhi to organize a satyagraha on behalf of peasants of Kheda? The administration did not suspend the land revenue collection in spite of a drought. The administration proposed to introduce permanent settlement in Gujarat. Which of the statements given above is or correct? The answer to this is one only. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2011. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is identities of sexual assault victims. When it comes to India, we have some of the regions in India where the society treats a victim of a sexual assault in a very bad manner. Unfortunately, in our society, the victim of a sexual offense, especially that of a victim of rape, is treated worse than the perpetrator of the crime. So, whenever there is a crime, what we have is a victim who's faced that particular crime. Then, what we also have is an accused or the perpetrator of the crime. The perpetrator or the accused has held his head high even after committing an act, but the victim is ostracized in the society, has to face harassment in the society as well. The victim, in spite of being innocent, is subjected to the forcible sexual abuse. However, in spite of her having no fault in the present situation, society, instead of empathizing with the victim, has been starting to treat her as untouchable after this sexual assault. In order to prevent this social ostracization, harassment, what we have is one of the important sections in the Indian Penal Code called as Section 228A. According to this section, it prohibits the publication of identity of the rape victim or any other details about this particular victim should not be publicized by whom? By the media, by other people. So her identity cannot be revealed by any of the media houses or by the people as well. But there has been an exception which is given to the Supreme Court and the High Court just for the sake of delivering judgments. However, recently the Supreme Court has also clarified and asked the media houses not to publish the names and even be even more cautious as well. And at the same time, it has also requested the sexual offences cases to be dealt in a sensitive manner. Why? Because even though the court have been given the exceptions, the High Court, in fact, even the Sessions Court will have to be really cautious, because if this continues to happen, the original intent of this particular section will go violated, says the Supreme Court of India. So it is not only for the media houses, it is not only for the organizations, but this should be equally applicable to the High Courts, to the Supreme Court, and even to the Sessions Court. If this particular identity is disclosed, even in the judgments, that could result in social ostracization and harassment, says the Supreme Court of India. So what is the significance of this particular observation? Basically, the social ostracization and harassment can be prevented, and at the same time, Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, which speaks about privacy of an individual, will not get violated because of this observation of the Supreme Court. So basically, it has just clarified that as of now, exemption is given to the High Court and the Supreme Court, where the victim's identity can be revealed in the judgment, but it has given a word of caution that if you can prevent the usage of the names of the victims, please avoid, says the Supreme Court to the Sessions Court, High Court as well. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.